Welcome to the Crossfit Alioth Unleashed podcast, where we discuss health and fitness, mindset and business with your host, Coach Lloyd. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Alioth Unleashed, where we post updates and teasers on our upcoming guests and podcasts. Okay, here we go. Another episode of Alioth Unleashed, and today we have a good friend of mine on the podcast, a member of the gym, and that is Shefali. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You excited to be on?
I'm always excited.
Right, I just want to go straight into you telling people who you are, where you're from, and what you do in simple terms.
So I am an integrative medical doctor where I predominantly see patients with chronic diseases, and I look at root cause. That's kind of like what I'm most interested about, and I'm very, very passionate about proactive healthcare. I am a mother. I have a set of twins who are now 10 years old, and I am originally Indian. My parents were actually born in Pakistan before the partition, and then they moved across to India. They went to the UK right after they got married, and they had all of us here. And then we moved here in the 80s.
So you've been in Dubai a pretty long time.
A long time,
And
yes.
how long have you done what you do being here in Dubai? How long's it been?
So I moved back in 2007, and I would say in 2009, I set up the private practice in Healthcare City. So I've had a clinic seeing patients since then.
So 14 years now.
Yeah, for quite a long time.
It is. 14 years in Dubai. It soon flies by, right?
It does, actually. It goes really fast. I think when you have children and then you have so many different roles, it kind of like does go a lot faster than you think. And I think in general, people feel like Dubai is very fast. Everything moves very fast. And, most people come here, think they're going to come here for a year or 2 year contract. And a lot of them just renew and then they're here a lifetime.
What was your plan in the beginning? Was it to be here for a couple of years, or was it?
So for me, I would say because I grew up here, and I think when you have your youth here, I've been here since I was 3, I guess, all the way until I did my entire schooling here. So this is actually the only home that I really know. So it was like coming back home. But obviously when you come back and you're married, you don't know how things are going to go, whether he's going to like it, not like it. But I came here from my mom. I lost my dad in my final year of medical school, and I found that my mom was here a long time by herself. And, I felt like there was a calling for me to come home to her and be close to her. And luckily I met somebody who was very happy to come with me. And so we got engaged and we moved here together in 2007.
Is your plan to stay in Dubai? Or did you want to be moving somewhere else in the future? Or what's your plan on that after?
I think like Dubai for us, especially after having the children, it is a little bit more about the kids. And I think they are extremely happy. I believe that they have really good education. I feel like Dubai is a place where a lot of people say it's a bubble, but they're allowed to be kids for a lot longer than I think other countries. So in that bubble, they stay youthful. And there's no rush to we don't necessarily have as many distractions as we do in other countries. So I feel like in general, the package for the children is a good package here. So I feel like until university, I would probably say for the girls going into university, I feel like I see myself being here, at least until then. But also I think just in general and like what I like doing, I feel like it's a place for it. I'm able to have my own, company if I wanted. If I want to educate, I can. If I want to go into like corporate, I do. I feel like there's so many different aspects to what I do that is accepted here. And I can be a mom at the same time. I don't have to put my kids in like care until whatever they come home at 2:40 or 3:40 or whatever. I can still be mom and I can be doctor.
I don't see why you would move, because you are sort of an established doctor in Dubai. You have a lot of things going on with the side, like, not even on the side of being a doctor, you have these wellness sort of talks and chats as well. So
Yeah.
I don't see why you'd want to move from a good position.
And I think also, like, in terms of a lot of the different industries in Dubai are very keen to integrate sort of proactive healthcare within their organizations. And I think when you've been here for a long time and you've done it, and then obviously COVID happened, so people now realize that there is something to be said for like the whole proactive health and, sickness or whatever. People are willing to kind of invest in that a little bit more for the longevity of being and being well. I think COVID really taught us that it doesn't matter whether or not you drove a Bentley or you drove a Toyota or not that I have whatever, but like no matter how much money you had, it did not discriminate. You were going to be sick, but the comorbids or the different, your baseline health mattered when it came, to like the outcome of sickness, and I think that's something to be said all over. And right now, when you look around the world, the other places you really see, how things fell short, during a time of like COVID, for example. Who did it well? Who didn't do it well? And, those things are also really important when you make choices when it comes to, moving your entire family, and what that means. And a lot of people, they may move because they have family support elsewhere. I actually have my family here. So again, I don't really have that many reasons to move at this moment, or rather I have more reasons to stay here, at this moment.
How important is health then? Because like you said, in COVID, I think people did sort of realize that how important health was. And then companies now are investing in people such as yourselves coming in and talking about whatever it might be, such as chronic diseases or, just staying healthy and at work or whatever it might be. How important is health to you and to Dubai?
I think like it's the proactive health that I think is really important.
Just explain that to people.
So to prevent disease. So we are a society that reacts to disease. We get sick, we go see a doctor. We get that fixed, we go back to doing what we're doing. We're not learning, we're not moving and saying, well, why did I get sick? And what could I have done differently to not get that? And what can I teach? Can I teach those things? Can I teach habits? So I always say, like, diseases don't happen overnight. It's like this, and then it's that. And everyone's like, oh, that doctor now. But it's not that needs real fixing as much as it is all the little thises that led up to the that. And I think if you're able to educate people on the little thises that they start to take in control early, the that's are going to happen much later in life. And I think that's hopeful. I think right now, the hardest thing for me is being in a society where medicine seems like morbid and sick and down and, like depressing. I really want a health care system that revolves around hope and belief in our bodies are able to do stuff. That's far more exciting for me. And that can only come with change. And change means that what we do, culturally, generation on, needs to change in order for us to have a better, next generation to this generation. And that's by learning. And it's the lifestyle practices, I think, that people just don't put importance in because things never happen when you're doing it. It's like the accumulative effect. And then it's like there, And I think that's where the importance lies in the proactive health and moving away from reactive, management.
So when we come down to preventing these diseases, illnesses, what are the three main things that, from your opinion, that people can do to prevent chronic diseases? So
I always talk about 8 daily multipliers, but whenever I write like articles or posts, I would say the top 3 things right now for me that I write a lot about is sleep and recovery, because I think people always steal hours from their sleep because they feel like nothing happens. Why waste time sleeping? But so much of your body repairs, and there's so many hormonal changes, and there's so many things that happen at night that we end up not allowing to happen because we take away sleep, that again, that impacts us over an accumulative, phase.
So what do you think, like, sleep is number one of recovery? I know sleep and recovery, you just put it under the same sort of umbrella. And we spoke about this on Tanner's podcast as well. He said if he didn't get his 8 to 10 hours of sleep, then there's no point in doing these other little recovery techniques, because the main thing that you want to be doing is getting your 8 hours of sleep first. There's no point in getting 4 hours of sleep and then going and doing your ice bath and your
100%.
foam rolling. So
100%.
I think it's important that people realize that you need 8 hours of sleep.
Correct. And people may be in bed for 8 hours but still not recover. So I think there's a lot of other things, like in terms of recovery. It's not only just sleeping. So overtraining, like for example, affects recovery. Then it's not let's just sleep more. It's like, can we actually train less or have a periodized training sort of like program? And I think people, my husband always used to tell me this when I was like a cardio bunny, before I ever learned about, training properly scientifically. And he said, stop chasing fatigue, chase performance, right? And I think that's where we get into this habit of we must sweat because it makes us feel good. And that means that, no matter what, we must exercise, no matter how tired we are, no matter whatever. And I think that's where people don't understand the difference. Sleep doesn't always lead to recovery, but no sleep, definitely no recovery. So your first thing is to like increase your hours, and then increase your quality, and then change your lifestyle in a way that actually allows you to have days where you can recover, in a periodized fashion.
So that'd be number one. Give us 2 more.
So I would say, I think stress management and mental health is a really big one for me. I think people don't talk about it. I'm obviously from, the Indian subcontinent, and in our like family and parents and grandparents, nobody would ever talk about being depressed. Depression is like weakness or whatever. And I think now with the rise in awareness of mental health, I think there's needs to be more of an action plan when it comes to that. So yes, we can be aware that mental health, exists, but what do we do? People are stressed, and a lot of us are stressed. So it's common, but that doesn't mean it's normal. Like, I think learning about how stress impacts all the various physiological effects of the body is also really important. And can we actually learn to meditate, if that's something that you would want to try? Write a grateful log every night, play games where it comes to, or there's EFT, which is like an emotional freedom techniques, I think it's called. Like, there's many different elements of stress management that I think people now need to bring in the solutions. So yes, we've now got the awareness, but what are we going to do about it? It's great that we all know about it, but what can we do about it? And I think this is something that I think people need to like take into consideration. And one of the things that I always talk about is knowing your uncontrollable stresses versus your controllable stresses. Because I think if you are aware of what's uncontrollable, really, there's no point in wasting energy worrying about it because you can't change it. But then the controllable stresses allow you to manage the uncontrollable stresses better, because you've not allowed your stress bucket to overflow by controlling what you can control. So that's something that I always educate in all the corporate like seminars that I give, and creating strategies for like companies for their health culture. And I think people, again, if human nature is very much like, okay, I'm stressed, I'm going to eat what I want, I'm going to get bloated, I'm not going to sleep, I'm not going to see my friends, I'm not going to talk to anyone. They let go of all the controllable things that actually allow them to be well, to deal with something that they can't control, They
do say stress is the silent killer.
100%.
So what happens to your body when you're stressed?
Oh, so many things happen. So stress in itself releases a hormone called cortisol, and I think a lot of people are aware of that. And if you think about like your petrol tank, say you have a petrol tank, and when you start releasing all this like cortisol, over time you actually don't have enough petrol. And if you don't fill your petrol tank, what happens? Your car eventually is not going to work as well. I mean, that's kind of like us. But the digestive system gets affected when you're chronically stressed. In your digestive system, that's your mood, all your neurotransmitters, so how you feel. Your immune system gets affected, which is why when we're run down, we get sick. So when we get sick, what happens? We end up taking antibiotics, damages the digestive system even more, and we don't replenish it. We don't sleep because now the cortisol changes from being too high all the time. It doesn't have that normal pattern. So now we're tired and wired until now sleep's not happening, so we're not recovering. So then our immune system drops, and then we get sicker again. When you're stressed, what do? You eat rubbish because it makes you feel good temporarily because it raises serotonin like temporarily. So then you eat more sugary stuff or things that light up those aspects of the brain that give you that false happiness for real happiness, but for a short space of time.
Pleasure.
Correct. Right? The pleasure centers. And then you get addicted to that. That changes your insulin, your cortisol. You get fatter. You don't look like what you look like. When you gain more weight, all those, the fat cells itself produce different hormones that changes your, all your other hormones, right? So this vicious cycle, that's why chronic diseases happen over an extended period of time. So chronic stress is something that needs to be managed and taught earlier in schools. How do we manage these stresses? Where's your toolbox of all the different things that you can utilize when you're going through stress so that you're not allowing your cortisol to always go up? Be aware that don't let all your lifestyle factors go wayside just because you're feeling stressed, but keep hold of the controllables so you'll always be able to manage, So again, I think that mental health aspect's really important to manage as well. And I think, an element I would say, if I look at all my daily multipliers, the other thing I would say is really food. I think people just don't have knowledge of nutrition. You're not taught it. You don't understand it. Most people don't even know what the difference between a carb, protein, and fat is, or, where does a fruit go? Where does people really, like, if you ask in clinic, I often ask them, like, where does a vegetable go? And they'll be like, is it protein? Like, people really don't have the knowledge of, like, your macros, so they don't really understand what they're putting in their body, which to me, actually, if you think about it, is incredible. Like, you wouldn't like, put a dirty colored water and start drinking because you don't know what it is. You wouldn't, but we end up eating without really realizing what we're eating and what it's doing. So I think people need to actually have a little bit more knowledge and look for knowledge on, I think, nutrition and what that means. And I think those would be my top 3, but I actually have 8.
Okay, I think 3 is enough. I think if you're watching and listening and you're struggling with sleep, recovery, stress, mental health, and even nutrition, then you can indeed contact Dr. Chef because she'd happily help.
But you know what? I think the other thing is it's not about managing all of them at once. I always say you don't have to use all your secret weapons at once. Just pick one. Yeah. If you do that better for a little while, you're better than you were before. And that's a huge success.
Agreed.
People are looking for massive changes, but the little changes make the big differences.
Yeah. It's like when you're just tackling nutrition, there's no point in telling people change this in your nutrition, just change bit by bit. And I think that's the same with all of your 8 that you say 100%. You bring up,
Any one that you do is going to make you better than you were yesterday.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's obvious I know that you love what you do and you're pretty passionate about your job role or your business and you as a person being the best doctor you can be. But what is it that you love about being a doctor? Something must drive you to be, keep learning, keep practicing, keep doing what you're doing.
I think the biggest gratification on days where I feel stressed is actually having someone be better in the follow-up from the day before. I think there's something to be said. And with chronic diseases, unfortunately, we see people who have been to several different, specialists and nothing's worked. And they just feel like, look, I'm not sick, but I'm not well. I want to be well. And I think when they come back and they feel better, that's kind of exciting. But I think for me, it's about connection. And I think in my clinic, and probably this has to do with losing my dad and having to be on the other side and not being the doctor, but being the relative and everything that I went through during that time, that I think communication for me and my patients is what creates the connection. And when I have the connection, I feel like that's when I get the commitment and the compliance. And that exchange in clinic where you're like chatting and you're learning about, and you actually are listening, and they see that actually someone's listening and they feel heard and they say it, you feel like you've it's a good deed for that day, because sometimes it's not the big like glitzy stuff. It's the small things that actually just deburden them in that consultation, that they feel like I've given them hope. And I think when you don't have hope, that's probably one of the saddest feelings, is that I don't know what to do, that helpless feeling. And when you give someone hope and they walk out feeling just a little bit more hopeful, this might be something, and I was able to do that, that's exciting. So a lot of people say, what do you think? I was like, well, if I didn't have hope, then I'll tell you, but there's always hope. Yeah. We just have to believe, like, there's always hope. Today I actually saw an elderly gentleman who came to see me because he's losing memory. And his wife is really worried that why is his memory going? And we talked about his life and stuff. And I know of them for so long. And he's like a real like businessman, and he's always worked, and he's been retired. And when you listen to his lifestyle now, his retired lifestyle, it's like wake up, eat, watch TV, sit, walk a little bit, eat, nap. I'm like, this is not you. You know? And today I told him about like, yes, walking, yes, but you need routine. What's your purpose now that you don't have a job? Find your purpose. Like, if you're not going to get your brain active, play Sudoku, get on these brain games, like, do cross crawling left and right, like activate your brain. If you don't do that, why will it still be working the same way it did? And now you're worried to meet people, your friends, because you're worried that's going to be embarrassing, that you're going to forget things. So now this is a barrier to you now socializing. These things are really important for humans to maintain connection and purpose, is longevity. The moment you've lost that, you're already creating a negative, So I feel like there's much more to my medical sort of consultations than just therapeutic. Like, I feel like it's about listening and giving people hope.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like practices now have definitely changed. When I was younger and I used to be sick, I used to go to the doctors, get called in, tell them what was up, he'd prescribe me a prescription, done. That was it. I feel like things have you're trying to change people's perspective on doctors now, whereas previously I would not have a relationship with my doctor like you do with your clients. Not one bit.
But I don't think you would have searched for anything different either.
No, you're right.
Because nobody knows it. Correct. No one knows any difference. Now, with the rise of internet, everyone's looking online and they're all like, this doesn't sound, Dr. Google says this. I know there's, people are searching for, something different, whereas then we just took medicine the way it was. And I will not lie, when I lost my dad and I was a final year medical student and I came to Dubai and I was like the daughter of somebody in a coma for 18 days, and I watched it honestly, it took away a little bit of, not my respect, but I didn't have them that high up, as in like, whatever they say goes. It kind of like brought them to a human level that also they're not going to get everything right either. And it's not going to be a success story, because it wasn't a success story in my house, and it didn't matter. And it just changed my view of like doctors, and that we are not superheroes, we're real people, and real people need to connect to their patients in order to get the best, which nobody looked at before.
Would you not come under an umbrella of like therapist as well? I feel like,
I always tell everyone I'm not a psychotherapist and I'm not a psychiatrist, but I still think everyone can help by talking a little bit. I mean, I'm sure you as a coach, and you have a PT, and your connection, that 1 hour, I mean, you've got to do more than just tell reps. You have a conversation. And if you're liked, they like that 1 hour with you because of your conversations, how you make them feel. If that's not therapy, what is? Right? I think as coaches, I feel like we need to stop having, I think, a hierarchical system of what we are and what they are. But we're coaches, and we just want to make you better in whichever way, if that means just to be heard, and that deburdens you a little bit or makes you find somebody you want to talk to or find a psychotherapist. We've done a good job.
Agreed. As coaches, we have like a 10,000 hour rule, and it's some guy that best-selling author, I can't remember his name, Malcolm something or other. It was one of his quotes about the 10,000 hour rule of becoming an expert. You have to be able to do 10,000 hours practicing a skill or being coached on the gym floor. Would you say that you're an expert now? Because you've been doing this for a long time, right? Probably a lot longer than 10,000 hours.
Do you know, I would say me personally, I think I have still a lot to learn. Every year, I feel like I need to learn a little bit more and do something a little bit better. And I think that the moment experts, they kind of like come with like, you know it all. And I just feel like I never want to feel like I know it all, because then I need to be doing something else, So I think I'm experienced, but I wouldn't call myself an expert because I don't ever feel like I want to be known as the expert, the one who knows it all. But I'm forever learning and searching and seeing how I can do it better. And if I don't know something, I will do my best to find somebody who knows it better than me. Because it's not about me, it's about you.
Yeah, I do think like continuous growth is important. I think if somebody does ask you a question and you don't know the answer to it, then study that and make sure that you do know the answer next time somebody does ask you.
My third year at medical school, one of my professors, we had one entire hour lecture about, if you don't know, say you don't know. Because that's the difference between potentially someone surviving and someone not surviving. When you're dealing with lives, it's less about your ego. And in fact, the moment people realize that if you don't know something, you're going to get somebody who does, they will still come back to you because you offered them a solution, and they'll always come to you for that solution, Do
you follow like a philosophy in life? Do you have a philosophy in life? Do you sort of have a quote that you sort of live by? Like for me, it's kind of, it is what it is. I say it all the time, It is what it is. Do you have some sort of philosophy that when you working or you're down, you got to remind yourself of this?
Well, I think one of the things that my mom was always told me is that there are always people worse off than you. No matter how bad you think you've got it, there's someone out there who is worse than you and probably smiling with that situation worse than you because they're aware of somebody worse than them. Like you always have to feel lucky. You always have to feel fortunate. So I feel like that's definitely something that I'm not perfect at. Like I definitely moan, I definitely complain, but on times where I feel, I do try and remember, probably because I call my mom and she tells me that when I'm complaining, but there is always somebody worse than you. And I think that's something that I try and also teach my children, because I think that all these lessons that I'm learning, the quicker I'm able to teach that to my girls, the better they will have their mindset, for situations like that.
So refreshing. I think I might live by that as well. I mean,
it is what it is.
It is what it is. I think I do remind myself of that sometimes, when you find yourself in a difficult situation, or you sometimes have to just remind yourself that people do have it a lot worse than you, and you do find yourself in situations where I might be having a bad day, but then I come across something or see something and it just humbles you, and you think, you know what, my life is not too bad.
100%. And I think that's actually, when I listen to my mom's life story of things that she's gone through, you're like, oh, wow, you survived that and you're here. And, I mean, obviously it's all relative, but I still feel like if you just keep that in mind, it just makes things not seem as bad.
It's funny how we subconsciously go to people that we love who's had it worse. Because I do the same.
Do you?
Yeah, for sure. Like when I think about it bad or maybe suffering in a workout, I do think of my mum, for example, who can't work out, for example.
100%.
So it's funny how we do shift to people that we love and we know well, who's had what we perceive as worse off situations than us.
And they are still able to talk to us without ever saying that they have it worse than you and still make us feel better.
So true. You know, there was a woman that come into the gym the other day, Sheikh, and she come in and she's only got one arm. And this person inspired me so much. And she come to my class and she was obviously not fazed by it. She's obviously had one arm for a while and she knows how to deal with it. She's doing deadlifts and, you know, I
saw her actually on Instagram too.
She's doing holds off the bar.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Like,
you know,
cleans with
people
one
like
arm.
that just, wow, inspire me so much.
Yeah, totally. I feel like that these things are, you know, again, you know, these are amazing, inspirational people that you look out for, and you just think also, you know, wow.
It's funny because you could see everybody's mood had changed.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that we see in the gym, actually.
Not much.
You know, it's probably something that as members who've been coming into the gym for years and years have not seen.
Yeah.
You know, so you would see people's attitude change. You know, they'd speak to her, maybe tell her how well she's doing, and she's just going by and just living a normal life, which...
And inspiring everybody that walks by her.
Yeah, hands down. So, yeah. So CrossFit Alioth, as a business, we sort of have company values, if you will, right? And us staff, coaches, we follow these certain values. So Alioth would stand for something. So the A from Alioth would stand for all-star service. Okay, so us staff, coaches, and everybody that works for CrossFit Alioth try and provide our members with this 8-star service. So from the moment you enter the gym, the first person you see, which is the people behind reception, to the coaches, the moment you step into the gym and the moment you step out the gym, we try and do provide this all-star service. For you being a doctor, what values do you follow?
I think we touched a little bit on that, is that like I do definitely want people to feel heard by me whenever they come in. Like I feel like that's something that I feel like being heard and listened to. I think giving people time, whether it's my children, when you have children, like they go through a phase where it's like, why, mommy, daddy, and it's like all the time. And one of the things that I never tell them to be quiet. They can ask, there's no stupid questions. Whether you're a patient, if somebody says, oh, I have a really stupid question, I'm always like, there's no stupid questions. I think that's really important as children, because you should never, almost like blunt someone else's curiosity, right? Like being curious is really important, and no one should take that away from you, because that allows you to learn, that allows you to grow, and that allows you to communicate, So I feel like that's to be heard, and no stupid questions is really important. I think being authentic, and again, we talked about it already, is like, if I don't know, say I don't know. Whether it's to my children, whether it's to anyone, patients or whatever, I don't know, but I will do my best to find out for you, Again, I think that's important. In clinic, I do recommend supplements. I do recommend herbal treatments, essential oil treatments, whatever it is. The one thing when I started practicing early is I said that I will not give anyone something I was not happy to give my mom. And I think for me, it's really important to be able to sleep at night knowing that I have done no harm, knowingly. And I am extra careful. There is zero risks in what I do, because I don't think I could live with that, and that's important to me, whether it's my children, again, at home, whether it's my patients. I want to live by these three that keeps me real. I don't want to get too big for my boots. You see that all the time, and that's when they make mistakes. You're really doing well, and then she went, and then I don't want that. I rather not. Respect and having, you can do good things. Some people may or may not talk about them. You do one bad thing, everyone's talking about them.
That's so true.
So that's also important for me. is to manage that, I think. And I do that, and I try and teach that to my children too, because I think that's important. And I love hard, and I think you should not be scared to do that too, you know, because that, I do believe in this whole like attraction, the law of attraction. And so again, I try and believe in manifestation and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I try and push that onto the kids and push that onto my patients, because if they start being a little bit more positive, you know, positive things happen, you know, and that takes away some of the negative, which takes away burden, which, are they better than they were yesterday? Yeah. You know?
Yeah. You know, we was out last week celebrating your birthday.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was like a yearly tradition, but people that was at your celebration, each of them asked you a question. And do you remember what my question was?
You said, what would you be wanted to be remembered by if you ever believed by your friends?
Yeah. So I want to ask you that question again, but not from a friend's point of view, but from a patient's point of view. What do you think they'd say about you as a doctor, as a person? Or what would you want them to say? Sorry.
So actually, it's so interesting. So I've been working on my website, and part of the website, I was told by my web designers to like get hold of a few testimonials. So I was like, okay, well, I've never really had to ever ask anyone for a testimonial. Yeah, I never asked for a testimonial.
They're so good to do.
I know, but I never really asked. And I think medicine is a little bit different because it's like confidential, and, you know, it's just like, you know, I don't know. We just don't ask, okay? So then I thought about it. I was like, who am I going to ask, and what kind of? And I asked, like, you know, a few people, and obviously they were actually, I was blown away by some of the things they said. But a lot of it revolved around listening. A lot of it revolved around me to them being somebody who practiced what I preached. So not only do I tell you what to do, but I live by it too. Whereas, you know, a lot of maybe doctors or whatever, they'll be like, you know, must eat well and must lose weight and must not smoke and do all of them, you know. So you know, practicing what I preach, listening, which is a really big one for me, and investigating root cause. You know, did I do my utmost best to try and figure out what's going on? And was I approachable? You know, it's not like me and you. It's like us. We're going to work on this problem together. And, you know, I would hope for that, you know, after giving, like, you know, people 14, 15 years, I always tell them, I was like, you know, I don't really want to see you forever. You know, it's okay. Like, you're done, go. And, you know, when I do see them and, you know, seeing that they'll come back on, you know, sometimes they just want to come for a chat and an update, you know, and that's a nice feeling, you know, to be able to like catch up on how things have gone, you know, because you often see them when they're complaining they have a problem, but sometimes people come in to like introduce you to their baby that you maybe have helped, you know, during fertility issues. You know, I remember those things, you know, and those are the things that I would say from listening to like the testimonials, that it really, I was really happy that I feel like, yeah, I have contributed. And that's a nice feeling, you know, to feel like have these positive comments, you know, come in. It's nice.
It's nice to hear, right?
Yeah, it is really nice to hear. You know, we don't get to do that because it's kind of like wrong for doctors to ask for testimonials in a weird kind of way, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm supposed to be skilled at what I do, and you come in for a problem and you pay for that and I help you. So why would you ask me how good am I? You know, it's kind of weird. But for the website and for what else, you know, I'm planning to do, that was something that I got to like do.
So, I mean, that rolls on to our sort of next question. With you planning to do, just tell us what you're planning to do next. Like, what's next for Dr. Chef?
So I'm actually opening a consultancy. And I want to be able to like actually provide strategies for companies for this health culture. You know, how would you do it? I want to help implement it. What's important for a health culture for the organization? It's just not enough to give someone a gym membership. It's not enough to organize a massage every week for somebody. That is not, they need education so that they can make choices of what's important for them. And I want to be able to provide that in various tiers of, you know, maybe very simple to very, you know, one-to-ones or whatever. So I want to be able to organize that. I want to help mentor health coaches. We have so many health coaches, and they all are interested in nutrition. They go and learn nutrition. They go through these integrative, like sort of, health coaching, and then they have to see patients. I think, it's kind of scary to do that, but also I think it's really important to like allow them to know what their scope of practice is and where to stop. And now you need a doctor. So how can you be a safe health coach where you have supervision almost if you need? And I will mentor you for sort of like, 3 months to help you integrate you into the community where you can then see sort of like clients. And then I can help you when you need me to help you. So I think that's also important. And I want to educate, like, again, get the right people and right partners in to try and educate and really create a much bigger positive awareness to proactive health. I want people to be happy and powerful when it comes to thinking about health.
So when it comes to people working with you under this sort of big umbrella that you've got, you'd have a person who, is a nutritionist, been in the good field for many years, and then you've got a person who's maybe, a person that can help with mental health, people in the right sort of field, an expert, if you will, on that. Right. Bring them all together, and then from that, you basically dish out the right people to the right.
Correct. So it really depends on what goals are for companies, I guess. But I would, look at all of it, and then depending on how they wanted to go, how deeply they wanted to go, is to connect them to the right people to support the organization. I mean, look, there are insurance companies from, have a corporate, and then they realize that every year on year, they have all these claims for this particular thing. Well, instead of like just increasing the premium every year for this particular thing, why don't we educate that corporate to be like, where is this problem? Can we help? Can we decrease the claims, which will benefit you, but also benefit the end user? Because we're actually educating. If we do what we've always done, it's not rocket science. We're going to get what we've always gotten. If you want change, you've got to change, right? So that's the change that I want to be able to create for these people, because they don't know how to do it. And they're not experts in that, so why don't we just go to them and help them,
so good,
as well going forward. Sound good?
So good. I think it's what people need, right? And I don't think there's anyone out there sort of doing what you want to do. We've got a lot of people that do want to do health and wellness sort of things, but for what you want to do and, get right deep into the main cause of people, having these illnesses, but through the work, like, why are they taking these sick days off?
Correct.
Looking into that, and then...
Do like being burnt out is a thing, but it's now called being burnt out that we don't know the science behind it. So it's one thing to know of all these fancy terms that are being spoken of, but no one understands the science behind it. I want to provide the science in layman's terms. And if anybody asked me what my USP was, I think that's what it is. I think I'm relatively good at making complex things and explaining them in a simple manner so that we can change.
Such an important skill.
And I think that's really important. And I think that's why I love being, like, if a child comes to see me in clinic, I love to be that cool doctor who I can connect with this child, because ultimately that kid should not be scared of seeing doctors. That's where it all starts. Yeah. So I want to be that cool doc. For the teenagers, I want to be the cool. For that father or mother, I want to kind of be that, like, I could be like your child, but here, this is what I would want, out of respect. I know how to communicate with the various, ages. And I think these things are important. Again, it all comes down to communication.
Yeah. I do think that's a sign of being good at what you do, and having that sort of experience is making, like you said, the complex things, make them simple. Correct. It's the same with you, and the same with the coaches as well. Like, a snatch is very, it's very technical, but for someone to break it down and make it simple step by step,
it's an expert that does it.
It's a sign to being a good coach, which I think them two.
How many hours? 10,000, did you say?
I've done more than 10,000.
I mean, like, that
seems like a long time.
This muscle up is going to take me a long time.
This year it's happening.
Is it?
Yeah, Shefali's going to get a muscle up this year.
Oh no, it's on the podcast.
So how did becoming a doctor come around? Because you've obviously been a doctor for a while now. How did it come about?
I mean, you're asking somebody who has parents that are both Indian how she became a doctor?
Yeah.
Okay. So Indian parents.
Not all Indians are doctors.
No, but Indian parents who both were doctors. Obviously introduced me to like medicine very early on. My mom's a gynecologist, my dad's a surgeon. And, you know, for them, actually, my mom was saying it yesterday, in my dad's mind, he wanted us all to marry doctors, be doctors and marry doctors. I don't know why, but I think they find it being a safe and almost like stable profession where you're supposedly respected and you earn well. And so I think that having watched them and being a part, and my parents were quite vocal, really. Like my mom would talk about deliveries. My mom would show me articles. My dad would like take me to hospital if he got a bleep and, you know, a road traffic accident, needed to do surgery, needed to be there. I would be there. You know, my, you know, any kind of work experience was always in the hospital. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I remember maybe being age 5 or 7 and having dolls and linking them up to like red colored bloody water and talking about appendicitis. I must have been 7, like no older than that, you know. So my vocabulary was very much based upon my parents. And so I think it just became almost natural at that time. And then I obviously studied medicine. I lost my dad. And then it kind of changed my thought process a little bit because the NHS was hard to be a part of when you were, it's just I felt very restricted in not being able to like spend time with patients. And I felt that was missing, especially, like I said, my dad being in a coma and stuff. So I found that a little bit difficult. So then I kind of took some time and I actually did a master's in sports medicine. I was always into sport. And so I found that sports medicine was a little less sad. I didn't have to like break bad news and tell people they were dying or have this as much. And the worst I would have to tell somebody is you can't play your sport for 6 months or 3 months or whatever. So I did that and then, you know, did like events like London Marathon, Commonwealth Games, things like that. And that actually, the musculoskeletal side of medicine was really interesting. And then obviously people want to be in good shape when you're in sport. So then I had to almost relearn kind of nutrition, but actually your inside and how well you're doing on the inside is very much reflected on the outside. So when I was working in body composition, I had to really learn about physiology in a different way. And that's how I ended up with this sort of like type of medicine, you know, which really I started off with half a day in clinic initially because I didn't know if it was going to do well or not. You know, and initially it was all about body comp. People just came to see me because they wanted to lose weight.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
It's pretty clear that you've obviously done fitness for as long as you've probably been a doctor.
Not longer.
Longer. When was it that you found CrossFit? Because obviously you've been doing it a while now.
Yeah. So
how did you hear about this CrossFit? Like, how did it come around?
Actually, it was Inner Fight at that time. And I knew Marcus and I went to see him because I wanted to actually run a sub 1 hour half marathon, I think it was. And I went to see him and he said, okay, it won't take us that long, but this is in December. This was May. He's like, why don't you do a class? I was kind of like bored of what I was doing, didn't really have a goal. And then I was at Inner Fight and he said, should I just book you in downstairs? And I was like, okay, sure. And I did my first class. And I remember it was like rope climbs and I had like no clue. And it was Carmen. And I was like, this is just, there's so many things I can't do. And that's addictive, is to be able to nail a new skill. And I kept just saying in my hashtags on my Instagram that whole time, it was like old dog, new tricks, old dog, because I just felt like there were so many new tricks that I could do that became, you know, quite addictive, really, you know. And then it was like your first open and it was like community and it was like everybody. It just has this addictive sort of, you know, personality, this CrossFit person.
Yeah. Would you say CrossFit is a good thing for everyone to be doing? Because I've heard many stories of people saying that the doctors saying to them, don't do CrossFit, you know, I wouldn't advise CrossFit or don't go and do CrossFit these days.
Do you know, like, I think, I'm sure all boxes are really different, but I think that at least if we talk about our box, I definitely think I've seen an evolved practice in the way in which we program. And I think you don't, as much as I see other boxes, I mean, the amount of injuries, everybody's trying to do everything. I really do see coaches saying, look, there's a progression to this skill. Start with this, nail this, move on. And I think that's where I think the bad name of CrossFit came a lot, is like, you kip before you're strict, but actually you should strict before you like all these kind of things. So for me, I felt like, because I had done a lot of strength training before, I could do pull-ups before I came. All the other stuff that I'm doing, I have really taken a long time to be able to do it. So I feel like I've been sort of lucky, but I see it with other people that everybody is really taking their time and not trying to like go too fast, not trying to go load too heavy, because there is an emphasis from the coaches to be like, stop there. So maybe when I mean, it's really hard to say. I feel like around our box, I feel like we're doing it pretty well, but I'm sure there are a lot of boxes that aren't. And that depends on the support system, I think,
How has CrossFit helped you, like physically and mentally, or professionally, personally? Like, how has CrossFit helped you as a person?
I mean, for me, I think to be able to have something at the age that I am, that I'm still not able to do and still work towards doing it, that's a nice feeling, to be a part of a sport where there's so much to learn. I think in terms of strength-based training as well, I think like as you get older, there's an emphasis on needing to have like your bones strong, the resistance base. So there's an element of strength. Again, like working on that and being able to lift more than I could 4 years ago and lift now, that's exciting. Mm-hmm. I look at my mobility. I mean, you've seen videos of my like first ever like, overhead squat, and it was a technical bar. I couldn't even it was to now. I've always kept those videos because I think it's really important to celebrate your achievements. And now today, doing reps of overhead squatting and feeling really comfortable in a new sort of movement, as it were, that actually the average person can't do it because they don't have that mobility. But I've worked on that mobility. That's good for me long term. For sure. So I think it's helped me in a lot of ways. I think the community, to an aspect too, is like you see the same people, you're on the same little journey no matter how old. And I am much older than most people in that gym. But while I'm in the gym, I don't feel it. So does it keep me youthful? Yeah, it does.
So apart from doing CrossFit, what is the secret of looking and feeling so young when you're one of the older ones, members in the gym?
I think, my mom looks really young for how old she is. She's about to turn 80, but she looks really good. But I actually think that, I know it sounds really odd, but I don't think I've ever felt peer pressure. So I think when I was at school, I played sport early. So I think that saved me a lot from all the other things that kids at that age get up to, because I was too busy needing to be up for training or a game or whatever. So I was always into sport from school. And I think that's really important for kids. I put my kids in sport, no matter how many times they want me to drive them for their football, like for however many hours. I'm like, yes, because I think this is going to save them in some way. Girls in that teenage years, they get caught up with all kinds of stuff, and sport's important. And then when I went to university, I didn't really feel peer pressure. So I never really felt like people could make me drink or make me smoke or make me do all the other things that you do at university. I just don't think that was that. And I had a really good connection with my parents that I didn't feel like I needed to ever hide anything. So everything was very out. I didn't really stress about stuff because everything was always out in the open. And I think that I always talked about my feelings, whether I cried or not. My parents never told me not to cry or be brave or don't be weak. So it comes down to without calling it mental health, there was an element of that already. I felt supported from my parents. I played sports, so I moved, well. I kind of never really had peer pressure. I never was a binge eater. I never lived to eat. I ate to live, I guess. I survived. I'm not like a foodie, So, and I could have fun without needing a drink or needing to be disinhibited or whatever, And peer pressure is a big thing. If you're into and you get carried away by peer pressure and doing things because other people, you're kind of not in control. I was kind of always in my own control, did what I kind of always wanted to do, and I think that has a lot to play in it. I think so anyway.
Yeah.
And all the mentors that I've had have always been sport and performance related. Charles Poliquin was a really good friend of mine, and he taught me so much related to like nutrition and health and functional medicine and the whys. So I think I've just been really lucky with all the people that I've kind of connected with and learned from, but it all stems from your 8 daily multipliers. I think so anyway.
So let's just spin that. If there's anyone watching or listening who are feeling older than they are, they're waking up, they feel old. What do you tell these people to try and get feeling and looking younger? So what do you tell them to do?
So when you feel old and you wake up and you feel low, when you feel like you can't do anything is when you feel helpless. So again, that helpless is really negative. So I still come back to my 8 daily multipliers and look at your 8. Look at what they are. Choose one. Do it well. Don't use all your secret weapons at once. When you feel you've got 1 down and you still have 7 more to go, suddenly your toolbox is full of things you can do, and then you feel more hopeful. That in itself makes you more youthful.
Yeah.
So really it goes back down to like the 8 daily multipliers and doing them well, but doing one thing at a time, and ultimately I really truly believe with all this biohacking stuff that's going around and we're learning stuff is to learn, read, engage. If you want to be different and you want to be better, read about it. Get a coach, find somebody who's good at it or you want to be like, or you feel has the knowledge to help you start somewhere because you don't know. Get a coach. Everybody needs a coach.
For sure.
And that's important.
How important is it you being as good as a role model you can be to your children?
I mean, I think that's really one of the most important things for my kids, is for my kids to feel like no matter how good, no matter how bad, no matter what you've done, is you can always come to me because mommy will be there and listening. Because I think when you don't, everything falls apart when you don't have anyone to go to, right? Like you always... I want them to, I train. Why do I train when they want me? Is because I want them to know training is important and that's being a part of your life. Why do I also sleep early and tell you to sleep early? Because I want you to, believe that sleep and feeling recovered matters to your performance tomorrow. I supplement them. I talk about that and they'll talk about, my kids are like 10, but I think from the age of 7, my kids knew about calories and carbs. Not that they would avoid things, but they like to be in the conversation. And I have never babied them. I have never goo gaga and talked to them like they were like another language. I've always talked to them because that allows them to talk to me, and that's really important. Ultimately, your kids are a product of you. No matter what anyone says.
Yeah. It's kind of like the monkey see, monkey do thing,
100%.
Right?
So if I expect them to do, I have to do. So you have to be the role model if you want them. Otherwise, gone are the days where it's like, do what I say, don't do what I do. I mean, that's affected your relationship from the moment you said those words, right? You want them to do because you do.
So your kids are pretty heavily invested in sports as well. Obviously, just before the podcast, you were speaking to one of your children about the football training. Now, what do you think that children learn in general from doing fitness and just taking part in like team sports or doing something like that? What do you think they'd learn? I mean, what do they take from it?
I think they definitely learn rejection when they don't get part of a squad. And
yeah, we've all been there.
But yet you still have to practice and can you be better next time to get in a squad? It's like, don't give up. I think that's really important for my kids. Having twins loving all the same sports is really hard. Sometimes one's in A squad, one time's B. They have to deal with that. They have to look at themselves. How can I improve me? I think that's really important. I think outside of school, when you're part of academies at their age, it's nice because you choose your friends who are into the same things that you are into, as opposed to these are your friends from your class, live with it, make friends. Like not all the personalities are going to be the same. So you kind of like have this escape outside, which is kind of like what we do. And I think in terms of team sports, your coach, learning to trust your coach, yet being able to communicate with your coach, each other, the cool down, the if you're injured, like this, the sports psychology aspect. I mean, one of my girls has been injured so much, but the sports psychology aspect is, will you come back? If you want to come back, you will deal with this mentally to be able to come back. That makes you strong. And once you've gone through something once, the next time's not as bad, right? So all of these experiences make them stronger. I don't believe in like we need to give them really hard time so they become resilient. I'm not into that kind of like education. I think it's very backward. But I think we need to support them at all aspects of whether it's the psychology aspect and be able to them to emote. Don't stop and say, look, you're weak, be strong, or blah, blah, blah. I don't think it should be like that. But there's a lot of team, camaraderie, friendships, you know, the social aspect, you know, a lot. I mean, I played team sport and I played individual sport. And I would say my sports psychology aspect when I played high-level squash was awful because I was on my own. And it was me and my thoughts, and that was not good. Whereas when I played basketball and I played like volleyball at university, it was totally different. You know, to share that pressure, totally different.
Do you think all parents should get the children to do some sort of sport?
Without forcing them, because then they'll never like it, you know.
I was forced to do jiu-jitsu when I was younger. I started to enjoy it. I had to. But I think it's different personalities, you know. I don't think everyone's fit to every sport. So, you know, can we really be the ones to decide what they're going to do? I think they should be introduced to all sports. I mean, look, I remember my girls not wanting to go to football practice because it was a male teacher. He looked really scary. And David took them, was my husband, and he said, I'll be here. I want you to give me 10 minutes. If in 10 minutes you don't like it, you just tell me, I'll take you out. In every sport they tried that they were not sure about, he said the same thing. And he sat there, he watched them, he made eye contact, watching the whole time. And every sport, they completed that hour, right? So it's to give them a little bit of support that it's new. Oh, it's okay. You might like it, but try it. Yeah.
You won't know until you try it. And most likely, they'll figure it out themselves.
You know, I've got a couple of clients that come to the gym and they have 2 children and they're totally opposite. One's such a nerd and one's so into sports. And obviously the one into sports doesn't need any excuse to go and play football, knock a football around the football pitch. But the other one she's more into books, she's more into learning. She's so clever. She's like, you know, for her age, she's ridiculously clever. And it's so hard for them just to try and introduce sport to her. You know, get her to moving. Like maybe, I think they woke up one morning and she was in the gym just running on the treadmill from her own choice. So she's obviously interested in some sort of movement, but I think they've tried so many things with her and it just doesn't seem to...
But like when they stopped, then she started.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, sometimes I really think that the more you tell some of the kids, you just need to like let them just say it, introduce it,
find
walk
it
away.
their own way.
And they find it their own way.
Yeah.
They do find it their own way. And they find different sports their own way too.
Yeah, for sure. So you are obviously one of CrossFit Alioth's heroes, one of our long-term members. What does being a hero mean to you? It's a question I'm going to put to you.
Oh, wow. So whenever I use the hashtag be your own hero, got it right. No, I actually love that hashtag because I think that everyone in the gym is actually a hero in their own right because they're there. And every superhero has their own powers and all of ours are not the same. So comparing us to each other doesn't make sense. So being your own hero to me means being the best that I can be in the moment that I am. And that might be different tomorrow, different day after, but it's not by me looking at the next hero next to me because they're a hero in their right. So it takes away comparison. And I think when you take away comparison, you take away disappointment. And that only allows growth. And that for me is extremely important. So when I use the hashtag, it is about me being a hero in my own right or somebody else being a hero in their own right with my own superhero powers that is not someone else's. Yet we're all heroes at the same time because we're all there.
She's so good at this. Even before the podcast, she's like, send me the questions. I didn't send any questions.
None.
And you've answered that question perfectly, as if I've just sent you the question.
I know, and I didn't even know you had that question. For the moment, I was like, oh, but actually, you know what? I feel like it's a good question.
Well, it's a good question to wrap up on. I think before we do leave, we do have some water here that I'd like you to try from Frio Sparkling Water, our sponsors. So you're going to just try this new flavour that's coming out.
This one here.
Yeah. So this is a new flavour that's going to be coming out, hopefully.
Did I say bad
Orange
word?
flavour. There's a lot of flavours that Frio do: lemon, watermelon, strawberry. So if you do have any ideas of
This is the
different
orange one.
flavours, this is orange.
It's actually quite nice, this orange one.
There we are.
I'm going to taste the lemon one after this. That's actually, sorry.
There we go. Some more feedback.
That's actually really nice.
I think we'll wrap up there. You enjoy your sparkling water. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much. I
It's been
really
lovely.
enjoyed that.
It's been a lovely chat. Very insightful.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed that.
Thank you to our main sponsor, Frio Sparkling Water, and a huge thank you to you watching on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know what you think by dropping a message in the comment section below.